Hey everyone, hope you guys are doing extremely well. Welcome to the first video of Iris Flutter Bootcamp. I'm Vishak Kamath, third year EC and an app developer in the Iris app team. Today we're diving into something really exciting, Flutter and Dart. Whether you're a seasoned developer or just getting started in a mobile app development, this video is for you. In the next few minutes, I'll give you a quick overview of what Flutter is, why it is popular, and how Dart, the programming language behind it, powers everything. So, what exactly is Flutter? Flutter is an open source framework created by Google that allows you to build natively compiled applications for mobile, web, and even desktop from a single code base. This means you can write your code once and deploy it across multiple platforms with the same code base. So, now you guys might be wondering why Flutter is such a big deal. Okay, so first of all, cross-platform development. With Flutter, you don't need to write separate code for iOS, Android, or web. One code base works for everything. Second one is fast development. Flutter has something called hot reload features in which you can see the see the changes you make to your app's code instantly. It saves you tons of time. Third one is beautiful UI. So Flutter uses widgets that let you create amazing widgets using Google's material design, which is built in, and also you can create your own design. So UI factor is also one of the things that helps. So in short, Flutter is easy to learn and it's efficient, it's fast, and it's visually impressive. So now let's talk about Dart. Dart is a programming language that powers Flutter and it's developed by Google as well. It's a versatile object-oriented language that feels a lot like other modern languages like JavaScript, C Sharp, or Java. So if you worked with any of these languages, you'll feel right at home. But why did Google choose Dart for Flutter instead of something like JavaScript? One of the main reasons for this is fast performance of Dart. So Dart compiles directly to native code for both mobile and desktop apps, which means apps run super fast with smooth animations and transitions. And it's also very easy. As I mentioned, Dart is a relatively easy language to pick up if you've worked with other object-oriented languages. It has a clean syntax and the learning curve isn't very steep. And also Dart has some powerful features like async programming. This is also one of the reasons. So why learn Flutter and Dart? Is it worth your time? So let me tell you, the mobile development world is rapidly moving towards cross-platform solutions, and Flutter is at the forefront of that change. Plus, the demand for Flutter developers is skyrocketing, making it a valuable skill to have in your toolkit. Also, Flutter isn't just for mobile apps. Let me make it clear. You can use it to build web and desktop applications too. So you're not limited to one platform. So now let's get started. If you're writing Dart code on your local machine, you'll notice that Dart files have a .dart extension, like the file over here, which is called bootcamp.dart. This is similar to how Python files have .py extension and Java files have .java extensions. So this is where all your Dart code goes. Okay. Now, every Dart program starts with a main function, like every other language. It's the entry point for your code, and Dart uses this to know where to begin execution. The structure of this looks something like this. You start with the return type, which is void, which means it doesn't return anything, and the name of the function, main, and then open the curly brackets. So here we have our main function. So all your code goes inside this main function, all the runtime code. So let's get started with the hello world program first. Hello world. To print something on your console, you need to use the print function in Dart, which has the print keyword and open brackets, which contains the string that you need to print. Suppose let's say hello world and close it in inverted quotes, and here you go. And don't forget to add a semicolon. So if we run this program, Yeah, hello world. It ran perfectly. So this was the first program we wrote in Dart, which is the most basic one. Hello world. Now let's move on to variables. In Dart, declaring variables is pretty easy. All you have to do is use the var keyword, which lets you automatically infer type based on the value you assign to the variable. So let me show you. Var name is equal to Vishak, var age is equal to 20, about the semicolon, and let's say var height is equal to 5.11, and say var is student is equal to false. Oh no, let's make it true. So here we have four variables. In this, name is a string, age is a is an integer, height is a double, which is a floating point integer, and then is student is a boolean. So it can be either true or false. So let's try to run this. Yeah, everything ran completely fine. But then if you guys want to use like types, you guys can still replace var with string over here and age with int. And for a floating point integer, you can use double, and for a boolean, you can just use bool. This should also run completely fine. Yeah, it ran completely fine. Now, Dart automatically knows the type with the var keyword. So now let me print these variables, print name, and then we do print height. If we run this, we get hello world, Vishak, and the height. So you can print anything with the print statement. So the variables, the var keyword, can also define complex types such as arrays. So if you want to define an array like this, let's say an array containing integers 1, 2, and 3. And now if you do print array and run the code, uh, Dart will print the entire array like this. So yeah, that is a cool thing to have. And if not for var, you can explicitly define the array type like list, and you define the type inside list int. And let's run it. This will run fine. So moving on to final and const keywords. Let's start with final. When you declare a variable as final, it means that once it's assigned a value, it cannot be reassigned. However, the value can be determined at runtime, which is you can just declare it now and then you can initialize it later. So let me show you. Let's define a final variable college. And now you don't need to define it here itself. You can just declare it over here and then you can give it a value NITK. And now if you print it, yes, NITK. That's how you do it. And not only this, you can also declare it at compile time like this. You can add NITK over here and then run it. Both ways are fine. But if you try to change the variable's value somewhere in between, like somewhere else after like initialization, let's say, yeah, it will throw an error. It will say the final variable college can only be set once. Try making college non-final. So if you make it something like a var, then it will run fine. Yeah. So this is how final variables work. So you can only define it once, and but you can define it during compile time as well as during runtime. Next, moving on to const keyword. Uh, the const keyword is used for compile time constants. When you declare a variable as const, it means the value must be known at compile time and it cannot be changed at all. For example, const pi. The value of pi always remains the same. That's why you would define it during compile time itself. So const pi 3.14, and now if we print it, we can see the value of pi on our console, which is fine. And now if you decide to not declare it, it will give you an error. The constant pi must be initialized. Try adding an initialization to the declaration. So if you just declare it and not initialize it, it will throw an error. So let's give it its value back, and then moving on, if we try to change it again, let's make it 3, it will throw an error again. Constant variables can't be assigned a value. Try removing the assignment or remove the modifier const. So yeah, it's the same thing. Both values can only be set once and not changed, but the final keyword can be initialized at runtime, while the const has to be initialized during its declaration. So that is with the final and const keyword. Okay, so let's start with the conditional statements. Conditional statements are essential for controlling the flow of a program based on certain conditions. Let's start with the simplest conditional statement, the if statement. If statement allows you to execute a block of code only if a specified condition is true. So let's see a basic example. If age is greater than 18, greater than or equal to 18, print you are an adult. And now if you try to run this, the program will run successfully and it will print you are an adult because we have initialized our age to be 20 over here, and then the condition over here is age to be greater than 18. So that is why age is we get the print statement as you are an adult. Now what if you have to handle both the cases for true and false? So this is where you use the else statement. Else, let's print you are not an adult if the condition comes out to be true, false. Now if you try to run this, it will still run the first statement because that is how our condition is. But then if you set this to be 21, our age is 20 over here. Now if you run the code, you get you are not an adult because the condition isn't true over here. So this runs the else block. Next, we can use an else if statement for multiple conditions. Say, let's make this something like if age is less than 13, you are a child. And then let's have one more if condition, else if age is less than or equal to 18, print you are a teenager. And then else you are not an adult. So if your age is less than 13, if this condition is satisfied, it will print you are a child. But then if the age is greater than 13 and then this condition is satisfied, that is if this condition is false and this condition is true, this block will run. If both these conditions are false, the last block will run. So let's try adjusting the age and let's experiment. Now currently the age is 20, so ideally the last block should run, which is you are not an adult. Yeah, so you are not an adult. This is what we got. But if we change our age to something like 17, then this block is false this block is true. So you are a teenager. And then if you set it something like 11, the first block comes out to be true, which is age less than 13. So that is why you are a child. So this is how if statements run. Okay, so next we are going to cover loops in Dart, specifically the for loop, for in, and while loops. These are essential for iterating over a collection or repeating a block of code multiple times. So let's start with the basic for loop. The for loop is ideal when you know how many times you want to iterate. The syntax looks something like this: for, and then you have a variable, let's call it I, and then let's initialize it to 0. Let's set the condition, which is, let's say, array dot, or no, let's set the condition to be 5, I less than 5, and let's increment it by 1 in every iteration. So then open the curly brackets, print I. So what this for loop is going to do is it will initialize a variable I to 0, and then in each iteration until it's 5, it increments it by 1, and it will print the variable once. So let's just show. We run this, we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first part of the if, like the for block, is initialization of the variable. You declare the starting value, and then the next part is a condition. So I should be less than 5. That is the condition over here. So I 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It will run till 4, and then in the fifth one it will terminate. And then the next block is the updation block. So you are incrementing it by 1. So, and then this is what the function, like whatever the loop body, so this part of the code will run 5 times. Now you can also use a for loop to iterate towards a list. So let's define, let's say, fruits, and let's make it an array. Say apple, mangoes, and cherry. Yeah. So let's say you have something like this, and then run the for loop. For int I is equal to 0, and then you have three elements in this. So I less than 3, and then I plus plus. Open the body, and then what you can do is you can print each element of fruits. So as we know, array indexing starts from 0. So this will be 0 index, this will be index 1, and this will be index 2. So it will run from index 0, 1, 2. And at the 3, when the value of I is 3, it will just terminate over there. So if we run this, you get apples, mangoes, and cherry. So this is how you can use a normal for loop to iterate over a list. And then now you can use the for in loop to, it's called for in. So what this kind of for loop does is you define the for keyword and initialize a variable. Let's just make it var. So since we don't know what exactly the type is, we know it's a string, but let's say for a general array, we don't know what the type is. So var, and then what you call the variable inside this, let's just call it an item for now. And then you use the in keyword and specify the array. So it's fruit for us. So fruits. So for variable item in fruits, which means for each item in the array fruits, you run the loop. And then now if you print item over here, it should print the each item in the thing. So it goes something like for variable item in the fruits array, you print each item. So if you run this, yes, you get apple, mangoes, cherry, apple, mangoes, cherry. One iteration was this loop and the other iteration was this loop. So this is for in loop for you. Next, let's discuss the while loop. A while loop continues to execute as long as the specified condition is true. So the syntax is very straightforward. So while loop, let's declare a variable count and let's set it to 0. So let's define the while loop something like while count is less than 6, open the body and then print the loop is running. So this will be your body. But then you shouldn't forget to update the variable inside the loop itself. So let's increment the count variable by 1. And yeah, this is how it works. While count variable is less than 6, print the loop is running and increment the count, which is the updation part. Now if you run this, you should be getting the loop is running 6 times. This is for 0 when the count value is 0, count value is 1, count value is 2, count is 3, count is 4, and here count will be 5. So that was while loop for us. And next, let's move on to comments in Dart. So what exactly are comments? So comments are lines of code which are there for the reference of the developers and not the compiler. So whatever comment you write is for some other developer who is working on the same code. So let's say this thing, comments in Dart. So in order to write a comment, you just in Dart, you need to have two slashes and then whatever you write wouldn't run. Let's say you print count in this, and if you run the code, it won't run, nothing. But then if you remove the comment over here like this, yes, you get the count over here. Let's there is a shortcut also. You use control plus slash, control plus slash. If you select a part of the code and control plus slash, it's commented automatically. Similarly, you can just select a block of code, control plus slash, yes, it's commented now. Now if you run this, the while loop will also not run. So yeah, it stops over here. Let's comment this part as well. Yes, this part is also commented now. So it will only run till here, which is the for loop where we're printing the numbers. And to uncomment this, you have to select the whole thing again, control plus slash, it's uncommented now. And then you comment this, yes. Okay, now let's start functions in Dart. So functions are essential building blocks in programming that allow you to encapsulate reusable code, which means if you have some code that has to be called multiple times in different places, then you encapsulate into a function and then just call the function wherever you need the code. So to define a function, let's define it outside the main function. A function, you define it over here and you start the function definition with the return type, like what value the function would return. So for now, let's just define a simple void function, which means the function wouldn't return anything. So let's name the function greet, and then a function name is followed by brackets, which means this is for like parameter declaration inside. For now, we'll just leave it empty and then now open the function body. So what this greet function does is we'll just print a welcome statement or some greetings. Welcome to the Iris Bootcamp. Let's have a this thing. Yes, so we have declared a function successfully. Now to call it, just call the function in the main function. So just function and open brackets. That's how you call a function. Now, if you run this function, if you run the code, you get welcome to the Iris Bootcamp. This is how it is. Now let's move on to a higher level of functions. Let's return something with the function. So let's define a function with an int keyword, like with an int return type. So int add. And now, like I said, here you give argument inside. So let's define int a and int b. So this function takes two variables, int a and b. And then what it does is, let's define a variable sum inside this, and then int sum is equal to a plus b. So what happens here is this function takes two arguments, an integer a and an integer b, and then it creates a variable sum which consists of the sum of a and b. And now we're getting an error over here. Let's see what it is. The body might complete normally, causing null to be returned. But the return type int is a potentially non-nullable type. So what you need to do is return return an int. Since we have specified int type for this function, return type for this function, you need to return something. So use the return keyword and return the sum. So whenever a function is called, it will return an integer, which is the value of which is the same value that the variable sum has in this. So let's demonstrate this over here. Let's define an integer sum, which will, let's not confuse you guys, let's define it as thing like a number, and number will be equal to sum. We're calling the function sum of 3 and 5. This will act as a and this will act as b. So a will be 3 and b will be 5. So what's happening here is, okay, the function name is add, not sum. Yeah, my bad. Int number is equal to add 3 comma 5, which means here it will replace a with 3 and b with 5. So int sum will be equal to 3 plus 5, which is equal to 8. So this function will return a value of 8, which will be assigned to this variable. Since the previous one was a void, you didn't have to assign it somewhere since it wasn't returning anything. But now this function is returning a variable. So returning a value. So you have to assign it to a variable. And then if you print the variable number and run the code, now you will see the number 8 over here. So this is how a function with a return type and and some arguments work. Now let's move on to some other kind of stuff, like other higher functions, which will be, let's say, just a void function, greet user. Okay, let's name the function greet user and let it just be a void function. Inside this, let's take a string name. The name is just a variable inside the function, so you don't need to worry anything about like this conflicting with the name over here. Yeah, so this is just inside the function. The scope of this variable is only inside the function. So now, if you define a function like this, now what the function does is it prints a greeting to that particular user. Let's say hello, and then we need to print the name which is fed to this function inside the statement. So in order to access variables inside a string, what you do is you use a dollar sign and then name, the variable name. So this is how it is. This is how you access a variable inside a string. So this should print hello and whatever the name of the user is. So let me show it to you. Let's greet user. Let's call the function greet user, and then inside the function we'll give it a name. So let's give the name as Iris, and then call the function. Now if you run this, you get hello Iris. But then you can replace the string with anything. Let's change the name to Vaibhav. Hello Vaibhav. And now if you change it to, let's say you can add variables also inside this, just like name. This name will fetch the value from the variable name we've defined here, which is Vishak. So this should give hello Vishak. Now we're seeing this. Yes. Hello Vishak. This is what we got. So this is it for the functions. Next we'll move on to classes. Started with OOPS, object-oriented programming. So Dart is also an object-oriented language, just like C++ or Java. So what exactly is object-oriented programming? Object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm that uses objects to represent data and methods. Let's break this down. So in object-oriented programming, a class is a blueprint for creating objects, and an object is an instance of a class. Think of a class as a recipe and an object as the dish you create from that recipe. For example, let's create a simple class called car. So you use the class keyword to declare a class and then you give the name of that class. So class car and then you open the brackets. Then you define the attributes of that class. So car can have attributes are variables that store data for the class. So a class of car can have different attributes like a string which stores the model of the car, and then a string again which stores the um, let's say color for the car, and then let's have an integer which stores capacity, like number of passengers. Yes, we have three attributes over here. So now we need to set values to these attributes. So how we do this is we define something called as a constructor. So constructor has the same name. It's like a method, it's like a function, and it has the same name as the class. So what you do is inside the constructor, uh, you specify the arguments as these attributes. So whenever you initialize a class, the attributes are assigned the values themselves. So we'll see how it is done later when I initialize the object. For now, this is what we do. So model, so one of the arguments will be model. We use this keyword to point it to the this particular attribute of the same class. So this dot model, and then we have this dot color, then after that we have this dot capacity. So yeah, this is our constructor. So now when we create the object of the class, we call this constructor and give values in the place of this model, this color, and this capacity. That will set these variables to the values inside this constructor. I'll show you guys how this happens. So let's initialize an object of car. Okay, car. First, you define the type of the object, which is car. So car type object, and let's name it as car1, and use the new keyword to declare a new, like to initialize a new object. So car1 new car object. This is where the constructor comes now. So new car, this is a constructor, and then just a second, new car, you give the car, see, we have it over here. Car, it takes a model, it takes a color, it takes a capacity. So let's give the car model as a string. Let's call it x11, and then we go and give it a color. The color will be black, and then let's give it a capacity of 5. So here we have our objects. Now if we decide to print this object, which is car1, and run the program, what we get is it will be displayed that instance of car. So it means there is an instance, everything was initialized properly. And now if we try to access the variables, so car has three attributes, right? Model, color, and capacity. So we can access the attributes of car using the dot operator. So what you do is you put a dot and then you type the attribute name. So car1, the object, and dot model, whatever model it is. Similarly, you can do it for The color also. Car model, instead of model, write color over here. And similarly, you can do it for capacity as well. Capacity. Car dot capacity. Now if you run this thing, what you'll get is you'll all the values will be displayed. So car model is X11, color is black, and the capacity is 5. Now I'll show you how to make another object. So you can make one more object. So car 2. And now what you can do is you can give another set of value to the same object, like new car. Let's make this as Z2, and let's set the color to white, and the capacity, let's make it 8. So we have another car object, and let's just paste these print statements below this. So we can have car2 dot model, car2 dot color, and car2 dot capacity. So now we'll print different cars. So right now this was the first printings. So X11 black and 5, and below that we have the attributes of the second car, which is car 2, so which is Z2 white and 8. This is the capacity of car. So that is how you define a car. Now I show you how to define a method inside a class. So methods are just functions inside the class. So they can have a return type or they can have a void return type. Let's have a void function, void method. So let's make it as honk. The name of the method will be honk. It will not take any arguments, and let's define the body. It will just print beep beep, and this will be universal across all the classes. So no matter what the attributes are, the method will be same. So if we define this, and then if we just car1 dot honk, we get this. Now if we run this function, we like we will say beep beep over here. This is a function. Let's define a method in which we'll be using the class attribute. So void display. This will display the class info. So void display print, as I taught you how to like access variables inside a string. So let's print this car is a, we'll use the dollar sign and put capacity is a capacity seater, and then let's put the model name. This is how the display will be. This is how you access the variables with the dollar sign. So this car is a 5-seater X11, something like that. So let's do that. Now we'll call car2 dot display. Similarly, let's call it for car1 display as well. Display. Now if we run the function, yeah, this car is a 5-seater X11. This was for car 1. This car is a 8-seater Z2. So this is how displays work. So this is how the methods which use attributes work. Now we can define a method which returns an int value, and it can return let's make a function that returns a bool. Let's say if these many people will fit in this car or not. Is safe. Let's make a method which determines if the number of passengers are sufficient for the car or not. This will take int passengers. And now if passengers is greater than capacity, you return false, which means this car isn't safe. Otherwise, this block won't run. You just return a true. So if number of passengers is greater than the capacity, it will return false here, and this function will terminate. Once the return statement is called, the function terminates, and after that, none of the code after the return statement run. But then, if the passengers is less than or equal to the capacity, it will skip this part and just move the return true. So that is how this thing will work. And now, in this code, let's just add this part. If let's add an if block, if car1 dot is safe, and let's add passenger numbers, let's say 6. Okay, if car1 is safe for 6 people, print yeah. Otherwise we'll have an else, we'll see, we'll print not safe. So yeah, let's run this function, let's see what happens. It says not safe because the capacity of car 1 we've defined as 5. If it was car 2, let's define car 2 over here. Let's test with car 2. So if we run it for car 2, now we're getting yay because it means car 2 is safe since car two's capacity is 8 people and we are giving only 6 people over here. So this is how classes work, and the use cases of classes are like very extremely broad. So you guys can explore more, and for now, for this tutorial, this is enough, I feel. Okay, so now that we're done with the basic part of that, let's move on to something more interesting. Let's create a Flutter app. Let's open Android Studio, create a Flutter app, and let's see how a basic Android Flutter app runs. So let's open Android Studio. Here are some of the projects that I have on my system, and click on this part, new Flutter project, and then over here select Flutter and then next. You need to have Flutter installed in the system to get these two over here. To get these two options over here, you need to have Flutter already installed, which I expect you guys to. If not, please install. Next, you name the project. Let's name it Iris Bootcamp. And then our project location will be in the studio projects folder, and the name of the project will be Iris Bootcamp. So then this is just a description, and all Android language will be Kotlin, iOS will be Swift. Don't worry too much about all this. Let's just create a project. Uh, yeah, so the name must be in a camel case, so it should be Iris Bootcamp. So this is how you name all your app projects. So make sure to name it like this, and then click on creating Flutter projects. Now you'll have a full-fledged project with all the necessary files and a default app, which is the counter application. So this is a readme file. If you open lib and then just a second, it open the Android folder. So we need a folder for this. So click on this, open project, and then you have lib, go to main.dat, and this is the basic Flutter app that you have. It's a Flutter demo homepage. So let me run this app and show this to you. Uh, Select and go to tools, device manager, download an emulator. I already have one, so I click on this. So the emulator is already here. So what Flutter does is when you create a project, you already have a demo Flutter app. So you can just play around with this, and you can actually delete the whole thing and start your own app from scratch. But then today I'll show you how the demo app runs. So over here, and this will run our Flutter project. So it takes some time to run the whole thing. So we need to wait. As you can see, it has built the APK and it's installing the APK on our emulator. So if you expand the emulator, you'll be able to, yeah. So the Flutter app has opened. Yes, so this is our Flutter demo homepage. So if you click on this counter, you can see the number is getting incremented over here. That is because they've used a stateful widget. You'll learn more about stateless widgets and stateful widgets in the coming videos, as well as different kinds of widgets. So for now, for this video, this is it. I wish you guys all the best on your learning journey, and thank you.